If you bring Gale to the end of Baldur's Gate 3, all the while encouraging him to stand up to his goddess Mystra and pursue his own goals, then in the ending, he will ascend to godhood, joining the pantheon of gods in Faerun, a deity representing the concept of ambition. And perhaps what is most interesting about this ending for Gale is that he has his own unique abilities, not seen anywhere else in the game. So what if we had access to those abilities all throughout the game and could use them in battle? Thankfully, mod makers had my back on this one. In this run, I will be playing through Honor Mode using God of Ambition Gale. As this is a modded run, let me go over the required mods. First up is Choose Your Stats, or CYS for short. And that's actually it. Just that mod is enough to turn Gale into the God of Ambition for the purposes of this run. However, for extra flavor, I wanted Gale to have his trusty feline companion Tara during his journey as well. So, in addition to adding a spark of divinity to Gale, I also included the mod Tara Evolved, which allows Gale to call Tara as a summoned companion. She is an abjuration wizard, with preset spells and abilities a few levels behind Gale, which makes her pretty interesting to play in her own right. Those two were the big ones. I also included a bunch of simple UI mods, which I will include the list in the description. UnlockLevelCurve was included just in case I exceeded level 12, but spoilers, I finished the game at level 12, so it doesn't end up mattering much. The rules for this run. This is Honor Mode difficulty, so no reloading saves, enemies are at their most difficult, and bosses have extra abilities. Gale will be adventuring solo, with nobody to help him, except for Tara, of course. The CYS mod provides a whole ton of broken cheats, but I will only allow the few required to create God of Ambition Gale. Nothing else will be used. There will be no Barrelmancy scene here. And finally, Gale must make it to and defeat the Netherbrain. No blowing up this time. That isn't a very ambitious end for our hero, now is it? Let's get right into it. For character creation, I obviously chose the Gale origin. I started with the cantrips Minor Illusion, Friends, and Bone Chill. Spells I start with: Mage Armor, Longstrider, Shield, Magic Missile, Disguise Self, and Featherfall. I set his ability points like so, with Intelligence starting at 17. You'll see why in a second. As a human, he gets a bonus skill proficiency, which I took as Sleight of Hand, and his class proficiencies will be Investigation and Insight. Gale wakes up aboard the Nautiloid hurtling through the hells, and he hears a voice in his head. Gale, you have an opportunity to ascend immortal limits, to achieve what none thought possible. But there will be many obstacles in your path. To assist you in pursuing your ambition, I grant you a fraction of my power. The power you will attain at the end of this road. The power of a god. So here is how you get Gale to become his more godly self. Once you have control, open up the inventory and look for a special potion. For me, it had a bright yellow icon, which made it easy to identify. Just drinking this potion adds a whole ton of extra abilities to your hotbar. The important one is this one, which I just remember as status/branded, and look for the little tadpole icon. In that submenu is a selection called Add God of Ambition. So what does this buff actually do? A few important things. First, it gives an aura called Aura of Possibility, which gives +10 to all ability check rolls to allies within range, including Gale himself. Next, it increases ability scores by +2 to all stats, except Intelligence, which is increased by +7 instead, hence the odd number in character creation. It also gives a substantial increase to HP, +200. And finally, it grants 3 new, powerful abilities that are shown in-game as level 9 spells, though they are usable at will. The first new ability is called Power Word Ruin. This is God of Ambition Gale's primary offensive ability. It is the equivalent of the level 6 spell Disintegrate, except it fires 3 bolts at once and has no saving throw. Very powerful stuff. The range is limited though, so Gale needs to be fairly close to his targets. The next ability is called Form Sculpt Tressum. It is a targeted polymorph ability which turns the target into a copy of Gale's companion Tara, except this Tressum cannot use attacks or actions, only dash and move. and it only has 2 HP and is a very light creature capable of being thrown quite easily. If the 2 HP is reduced to 0, the creature returns to its original state, losing actual HP equivalent to the rollover damage from the attack. Notably, this ability also has no save, and can even be used on Gale himself. The final, least useful ability is called Divine Revelry. It puts an effect equivalent to Otto's Irresistible Dance on any number of targets within a small radius. It also spawns a fire wine barrel in the center. The dance has no save, can even affect Gale, and unfortunately only lasts a single turn. It doesn't even eat up the turn after Gale uses it. While it's funny making a bunch of people dance around like idiots, since they can immediately recover and still use their turn, it's rather useless for combat. In addition to the God of Ambition buff itself, I also thought Gale needed the ability to fly, which is another ability that can be found on the CYS potion. This time, it is located in the menu with the little dash icon, which is for movement-related abilities, and is called Add Flight. This just adds the fly ability to Gale's hotbar, so he can fly at will, using half as much movement and allowing for vertical traversal. And that's it. Those are the only things I did to create the God of Ambition. Everything else is within the rules of the vanilla game. It is worth noting before we start that the God of Ambition transformation negates the effects of all equipment on Gale, including weapon. I even tested items such as the Shapeshifter's Boon Ring. Nothing applies. So equipment is 100% worthless on this run. But buffs from spells and items work fine, so anything I can get from being a wizard or items such as elixirs or scrolls are the best options. To that end, I will be maintaining mage armor and Longstrider throughout the game, and making frequent use of shield as a combat reaction to protect Gale. Alright, let's get started. Newly Divine Gale flies out of the starting room and encounters a talking exposed brain. Here we can see how checks work during this run. It's basically always a flat +10 to everything. Makes most things pretty easy, but especially intelligence checks. Gale effortlessly frees the brain creature, which calls itself Us, and they continue onwards to meet some kind of green alien woman in shining silver armor. Not trusting this strange thing that showed up out of nowhere on a crashing ship in the Hells, Gale turns her into a cat and tosses her into a hole. Good riddance. Next, while exploring upstairs, he finds a woman trapped in some sort of sealed pod, similar to the ones incubating mind flayers. After finding a way to free her, he decides not to take her along with him. His ambitions are his alone, though he notices her coddling some strange object, an object that looks awfully tantalizing. He must have it. So he blasts the woman into space dust and claims it for himself. At the helm of the ship, Gale destroys everything in his path, turning the Cambion commander into a cat in the process. He gets to level 2 during the battle and then takes control of the transponder. The ship transports itself back to Faerun, but it is too late to make a safe landing, and he is thrown from the ship, landing on a beach amidst the wreckage. And this is where the journey truly begins. All Gale knows to do now is find a solution to his tadpole problem, so he has to seek out a healer. Someone who can get rid of this so he can go back to worrying about the ticking time bomb in his chest. Speaking of which, he should also keep a steady supply of magical items handy to use as comfort food. At level 2, Gale gains a class specialization. For this run, I will be running Gale as a mono-class wizard with a specialization in divination. I figure portent dice are the most generically useful trait from the wizard subclasses. There are definitely more optimized multi-class options for this God of Ambition build. Thief Rogue comes to mind for extra Tressum uses per turn, but for simplicity's sake, this run will be just wizard. Gale learns the new spells Tasha's Hideous Laughter and Thunder Wave here, though they won't see much use. Gale explores the region, finding a dank crypt filled with looters. After demolishing them all, he goes to bed for the evening. And during that first night, he runs into his old friend Tara, who approaches him bearing gifts. A ring, which he could choose to eat to sate his hungry magic orb, and also the gift of her company, as she will be a constant companion for the rest of the run. The Tara Evolved mod just gives a special ability added to your hotbar, which is obtained at this moment, when Tara visits the camp during your first long rest. The ability can be used once per turn, but only outside of combat, and it doesn't create a new instance of Tara, just relocates her next to you. So she maintains buffs, even when being resummoned. If she goes down in combat, she can be revived like a normal companion. Tara is a wizard and starts out pretty squishy. Her only offensive cantrip is Firebolt. She also has a weak melee strike with her claws. She can meow like the cat familiar to distract enemies, and she can also fly at will just like Gale. As she levels up, she will get some rather good new abilities, so I'll be sure to mention some of those as we go. In the morning, Gale is already suffering from his arcane hunger. Instead of the ring Tara gave, Gale decides to consume the Everburn blade. He has no use for swords after all. Gale finishes clearing out the crypt, awakening some skeleton man in the process. He has a strangely familiar divine scent to him as well. And then Gale moves on outside, locating a druid grove under siege by some goblins. Gale decimates them. During this battle, he reaches level 3. At level 3, he learns the new spells Knock and Shadow Blade. I tested to see if he would equip the Shadow Blade, but nope. It strangely appears in your inventory though, and can even be sold to vendors. Maybe not worth the spell slots to sell them though. In the Druid Grove, Gale finds his first vendor friend. During this journey, Gale will be needing a lot of money. See, learning new spells as a wizard costs quite a bit. It adds up. And while many scrolls can be found randomly in the world, sometimes it's more convenient to just buy the ones you need. So having a guy like Aaron here to sell junk to will help him keep his coin purse bulging. Auntie Ethel makes a cute comment about Gale's complexion. It made me giggle.
There isn't a bit of color in those cheeks, Piglet.
At this point, I noticed a quirk of the God of Ambition buff. While on the surface it sticks around through long rests, the aura of possibility goes away. That is the buff that provides a +10 to everything. Since Gale is naked through this whole run, that buff is actually the only way he can pass any checks at all. So that means after every long rest, I will be removing and reapplying the God of Ambition buff to refresh it, a necessary annoyance to make things work. While many battles go stupidly easily, just blast, blast, blast and everything is dead, there was one battle that was a very close call. The Harpies. If it weren't for Tara, this would have been a wipe. Gale just kept failing his luring save over and over again. It was quite scary, to be honest. The reason for this is that the Aura of Possibility buff improves ability checks, but not saving throws, so he has to use his Raw Wisdom saving throw. After Tara saved his bacon by zapping the harpy singing the luring song with a chromatic orb, Gale finally got his revenge, taking them all out at once. After the harpies, Gale visited the inner sanctum of the grove looking for a so-called healer named Nettie. Along the way, he convinced the druid leader Kaga to let the child Arabella go, then found some evidence of suspicious activities of hers in a chest. Finally, he met Nettie, but she said he really needed some other druid named Halson instead. And then she had the gall to poison him with a stick just because he said nothing strange happened with the tadpole. Also, who is she saying this to? Tara? Well, she also refused to give him an antidote, so... Nettie turned out to be a dead end, so next he went off into the world. He found a group of absolute cultists around their brother dying of some wounds. He convinced them to attack the owlbear that did this, then had a strange encounter with the tadpole. The owlbear smashed the cultist. Saves the effort for Gale, I guess. Then he blew up the owlbears, sparing the cub. An adorable doggy in the woods became Gale's friend. We will see him later, I'm sure. Then next to a nearby stream, he had another bout of arcane hunger, which he fed with a pair of gloves he stole from the tiefling leader Zevlor. He ran into a fiery tiefling girl who wanted to join up with him, but he wasn't interested and left her there. This is where I tried something fancy. I wanted to introduce Karlach to her friends, the Paladins of Tyr, up the hill. So I tried kidnapping her in Tressum form, but she kept wandering back to her spot by the stream, and it was hard getting her into position in the toll house. When I finally got her pretty close, the Paladins aggroed me, but not her. She didn't join in. I even knocked Anders all the way down to her spot, and they ignored each other. It was unfortunate. I was hoping there was some sort of script for these two to always attack each other, but seems not. Gale incinerated everybody present, though it was Tara who defeated the archer, completely solo I might add. Good kitty. After that battle, Gale took another long rest, though nothing really noteworthy happened. The next morning, Scratch had wandered in though. The camp is already looking more lively with 2 animal companions hanging about. And a skeleton. I guess he's welcome too. As he wandered into a village, some goblins threatened him, but they definitely should have picked their targets a little better. Gale saved a deep gnome strapped to a windmill from a group of them, and let him run along on his way. He also interrupted a lovely young couple in the, act, and put them down when they got violent. A group of ogres, led by one with an uncharacteristically refined vocabulary, threatened to eat Gale. They were turned to ash. Wizard level 4, which means our first feat. At level 4, Gale takes a new cantrip, which there aren't really very good choices, so he decides to just take Toll the Dead arbitrarily. For new spells, he takes Arcane Lock and Enlarge. And finally, the feat, which has to be Alert, the single most impactful thing he could take in Honor Mode. With Alert, I rarely have to worry about not going first, which means disintegrating the most dangerous target before it can act, or maybe turning it into a cat, both very effective forms of defense. Let's keep on trucking. Gale ran into the kindly old lady from the grove, Auntie Ethel, being harassed by some common street toughs. He tossed them around a little bit before heading down towards Auntie's house to check on her. Of course, he immediately recognized the fey glamour disguising the area. Since his map was already marked, he headed towards the swamp tree where Kagha's meeting was supposed to take place. He flattened all of the creatures surrounding the tree and claimed the hidden evidence. Some redcaps thought they were passing as sheep. Need to work on your cosplay skills. In Auntie Ethel's house, he saw some young lady eating pie, and Auntie thanked Gale for intervening against those dangerous men back there. Auntie offered to help take out his tadpole, but he was already sniffing something is wrong here, so he declined. Bought up a bunch of her strength elixirs, though, for more cat-flinging fun, of course. Now Gale made his way to the goblin camp, taking down anybody who tried to get in his way. He had a bit of a psychotic episode where he saw an armored elf, a pale young woman, and the most handsome young man he'd ever laid eyes on. What a cast of characters. Time to forget all about this. He ran into a gaudily clad minstrel performing his slam poetry for the goblins, but got him taken away in chains. Then he rescued the owlbear cub, who was being used as a cheap party game. Now Gale was truly infiltrating the goblin camp. He convinced the guard to let him pass and went in search of word of the druid Halson. In the main chamber is the goblin priestess Gut, using her hot magical brand to mark the disciples of the Absolute so they can identify each other. Gale decides he'd rather not get stuck with a hot stick right now, but Gut still makes her offer to meet him in her chambers for a private session. Well, that settles that then. With her dead, Gale can use this passage to reach the Underdark later. Before that, he finds a man being tortured by a few goblins, so he obliterates them to rescue him. Gale indulges himself with a little pain play, picking up the Leviatar's love buff. Then he rescues Volo from the cage he's stuck in, letting him join Gale's camp. Hey, we finally got a regular human there. Next, Gale visits the warg pens, where he sees some kids throwing rocks at a bear. The bear even calls for help. So Gale does what he does and fries all the goblins in the room, letting the bear loose in the process. In the aftermath, the bear shows itself to have been Halson in wild shape, who tells Gale what's going on with his tadpole problem. He needs to travel to Moonrise Towers. Alright, so that settles where to go next, but Halson won't guide him there until this goblin camp is clear. Sounds like a plan, my man. Gale jumps in to intervene with a man about to be thrown in the pit of spiders, but doing so made him get noticed by the whole room of goblins behind. Now this one is a real party. This is probably the first time Gale has had to face down a force of enemies larger than what he can handle in a single turn. He makes a point to fly up near the war drum to prevent them from using it and warning the whole goblin army. Then several goblins do some ineffectual attacks, including their leader Dror Ragzlin, who just activates his aura and throws a javelin. Tara does Gale a solid by destroying the drum so that he can focus on incinerating goblins. So next turn, Gale takes down 3 goblins and then turns Dror Ragzlin into a cat. Now, the force has already been whittled down to just 3 more active targets and 2 cats. Gale also manages to retreat all the way up into the rafters. Tara throws a firebolt at a goblin from the rafters, then Gale uses his next turn to dispose of 3 more targets. Only cats remain now. This fight is over, but Gale wants to see what Dror Ragzlin was up to here. Tara flings the last remaining goblin off this ledge with Thunderwave, which somehow survives the fall damage. Gale picks up the last goblin and chucks him into the spider pit. Then Tara and Gale both retreat from the battle, leaving Draw-Ragzlin alone. Somehow, the battle goes back to a neutral state, with Draw-Ragzlin losing aggro. This opens up the opportunity for Gale to get some XP for speaking with the dead Mind Flayer. As soon as that scene is finished, Gale finishes Ragzlin off. That's 2 leaders down. At this point, Gale takes a bit of a trip back to the Druid Grove. He sells his junk, then heads down to Kaga to rat her out for her misdeeds. Get it? Rat? The Shadow Druids reveal themselves and task Kaga with finishing off Gale, who has no qualms wiping them all out. Kaga is incinerated in the first turn. She may have misjudged this situation, just a tad. What few allies Gale has in this battle all survive, including the level 2 wolf. Gale returns to the Goblin camp to parley with the last Goblin leader, intending to set off the raid on the Druid Grove and side with the Druids, but it turns out killing Ragzlin actually aggroes the entire camp. Whoopsie. Guess they all have to die. He blows up the main courtyard first, which is another huge fighting force of goblins, way more than can be dealt with in a couple turns, but they're also pathetic and do very little damage if they even hit at all. So Gale just takes his time eliminating 3 per turn and changing a 4th into a cat. Once they've all been defeated, he goes back inside, aiming for Minthara's room. Along the way, some smarmy devil shows up and blah blah blah, nobody cares. Now for Minthara, who actually managed to put a little bit of scare into Gale. Minthara casts Hold Person, and actually succeeds at it. I think I clicked the wrong button in the portent menu, or just misunderstood what was happening. So with Gale paralyzed, it's up to Tara to deal with this. She doesn't do much though, and Minthara comes in with guaranteed crits and just cleaves away Gale's HP. Gale succeeds his saving throw to escape from Hold Person, so he will get another turn soon. Fortunately, Minthara wastes her next turn buffing. Big mistake. That gives Gale a window to disintegrate her and her buddy, and that finishes up the Goblin leadership. With that done, the Grove is officially saved, and Halsin can be convinced to guide Gale to Moonrise Towers. He returns to Halsin to give him the good news, and the 2 of them go back to the Druid Grove to celebrate. Gale and Halsin share an intimate moment together. He and the Tieflings join Gale's camp for the night, and Gale doesn't really participate in the party. Sorry dudes, there are way more important things to be worrying about, like attaining true divinity. Godhood waits for no man. The morning after the party, Halsin explains the route to Moonrise Towers, through the shadow-cursed lands. But there's also a path underground. Also, Volo gives Gale a mechanical eye, because why not? Before heading to the Underdark, Gale decides to visit Auntie Ethel and sell some junk. Then he takes a nap. During said nap, the Dream Visitor shows up to... Man, I forgot I made his Dream Visitor look like this. Thank you, randomize button. Anyway, Gale unlocked tadpole powers finally. After selling more crap to Ethel, he finally decides to act on his suspicions and turn her to ashes. Oh, she was a hag. Well, I'll be. So he ventures down into her lair, which is now trap-free and full of people she had been torturing. And he reaches level 5, which is a big one. Now Gale picks up the very important level 3 spells, Haste and Counterspell. At the bottom of the hag's lair, Gale finds the girl who Auntie was feeding cakes to before, Mayrina, who it turns out was going to hand over her baby. She's upset she can no longer do this. Gale gives her a zombie as an apology, and grateful, she saunters off, never to be seen again. Now it's finally time to make that journey into the Underdark. Gale travels back through the Goblin camp into the secret passage in Guts Chambers. At the bottom, he finds a Selenite temple, then turns a big scary eyeball monster into a cat. Not so scary now, huh? The Boulette faces a similar fate. Man, these Underdark bosses sure are weak sauce when they can be polymorphed into a cat. Gale climbs the Arcane Tower, discovering that even the turrets can be turned into cats. Unfortunately, they still function as turrets. Cat turrets. At the top of the tower, he just fries Bernard right from the get-go, then lets the other constructs come to him inside the elevator. He collects some mushroom samples from the tower before heading down towards a field of mushrooms. There, he finds a colony of mushroom people who communicate telepathically. They're perfectly fine with letting him in to talk to them. Cool guys, actually, very chill. A rather friendly hobgoblin named Blurg helps Gale out by calling an equally friendly Mind Flayer to examine his tadpole. They decide to use the mushroom samples from the tower to craft a potion, hoping it will reveal something they can use to extract the tadpole safely. It just gives him a new tadpole power. Huh. Some gnome is writhing in pain from being poisoned by a Dwergar. Gale gives her an antidote and she rewards him with some boots. That seems like a fair trade to me. She asks Gale to take on the Dwergar slavers to free the rest of her people. Coincidentally, the Myconid leader has a similar request: kill some Dwergar. Guess that's what's next on the agenda? Along the way, he picks up a temporary mushroomy companion and drags him towards a big glowing tree. The tree is surrounded by hook horrors and a very unstable drow wizard, but they don't prove to be much of a threat. Now Gale finds these aforementioned Dwergar slavers lurking in a small village by the beach. He turns them into mushroom food. Speaking of, after the battle is over, Glut here decides he wants to murder the leader of the colony up the hill. That seems uncalled for. Sorry, Glut, but there's only room for one ambitious hero in this party. Oh look, a boat. On the way across the underground lake, Gale is ambushed by another boat carrying some Dwergar. After shoving the leader off the boat into the water, Gale vanquishes all of his buddies on the other ship, leaving his own safe to travel onward. He arrives at some sort of outpost crawling with Dwergar. It's a simple task to talk his way in, letting him run around freely, taking these guys out at his leisure. First up, a Beastmaster and his pet spiders. Then, some drunks harassing a poor gnome slave. Gale follows the path up and finds a rather secluded chamber housing a single gnome, and a very suspicious-looking barrel. First, Gale picks the girl's pockets and finds a very suspicious-looking vial. After pocketing both of those things, the conversation starts automatically, where Philomene is no longer in a position to make threats, so she backs down. And after a short conversation about rune powder, she notices that the one in her pocket is gone too, which causes her to go hostile. Probably could have gone free if you just left well enough alone. Back in the main area, Gale explores a bit and finds some mean Dwergar whipping some poor helpless animals. Gale convinces the animals to clear the rubble, and then a fight begins against the Dwergar, who are effortlessly destroyed. The furry creatures, unfortunately, were under the effect of the spell Friends in order to better convince them to help. When that spell wears off, they become aggressive too. This one really isn't my fault. Gale finds a path up there leading to an ancient forge. After throwing some skeletons into the lava to feed the local fauna, and then being mistaken for food himself, he finds the main area of the forge and gets ready to craft something in it. He starts by making the shield, and when he turns the forge on, a giant robot something or other crawls out. Grim here would normally be pretty threatening in a 1v1, but he can also be turned into a cat. Whoopsie. Unfortunately, the game won't allow you to pick him up, even in cat form. He has some immunity to being moved around by force, including by being carried. Darn, I really wanted to transport him over to where the Dwergar are and let him loose. Too bad. Power word ruin it is. He goes down in a few turns of ruin followed by Tressum, keeping him completely helpless. Easiest Grim win ever. Gale can't use the equipment, but he makes it anyway, for funsies. Now Gale decides to just eliminate all of the other Dwergar in this place before opening up the rocks and freeing Nier. The first turn, he reduces all the Mind Masters but one to ash, and the other to a cat. That eliminates the biggest threat in this fight, mind control. Once all the Dwergar were taken care of, he uses Power Word Ruin to open up the rubble as well, then dodges Nier's threats by, you guessed it, turning him into a cat. Well, that just about does it for Grimforge. There are some mimics that give some minor XP and loot, but the bulk of the content is done, so it's time for Gale to get moving. On the way out, he returns to the Myconid colony, remembers that the friendly dwarf lady's husband is missing, and finds the dummy in a field of explosive mushrooms. Gale peers into this woman's future and knows that she's better off without him, so he makes the right call. He made sure to save the valuable mushroom first, of course. Now Gale is truly done in the Underdark, and he uses the elevator in Grimforge to reach Act 2. And who is waiting right here? None other than Elminster, Gale's old friend and confidant. Elminster tells Gale that he may seek forgiveness from Mystra if he uses the orb in his chest to blow up the Absolute. Gale isn't really seriously considering that option. He has too much ambition for that. His path leads to godhood, not martyrdom. While getting some well-deserved sleep before entering Act 2 proper, Scratch pledged to support and joined as a companion. While we would normally love to have a companion that can use the help command for a future boss battle, Tara actually can do that too. So thanks for the offer, boy, but we got it covered. Also, the owlbear cub decided to pay a visit and eat our food, but at least that means we should be gaining yet another animal friend in the near future. Including Halcyon, that makes 4 animals and a bone man in camp. Starting here with Act 2, Gale will be switching to Bloodlust elixirs. He was using Strength elixirs to toss enemies around like ragdolls, but now things are tougher. More enemies per battle, many of them with enough HP to survive a single disintegrating blast, so being able to get multiple actions per round will be very helpful, and no danger of losing concentration in a whole turn like with haste. The Shadow Curse is a problem that Gale here has no easy answer to. He has no equipment, so he can't use a light cantrip to give himself an easy light source. He also can't carry a torch like a normal person. One answer is to drag a lit torch along the ground, but I found an easier one. If you scan the ground with your cursor very carefully, you might find little patches of light throughout the Shadow Curse lands. These areas are actually bright enough that the Shadow Curse doesn't affect you. In that way, Gale can fly from spot to spot and avoid ending turns in the curse. Since we entered from the Grimforge side, the first event of Act 2 is this Harper adventuring party, which tragically gets a member snatched. As mentioned, battles in Act 2 often have more targets now, and this one has 7 to start. Too much to even take out with 2 power word blasts. They're also spread out, which makes it harder to hit them all, so it took 2 turns instead of just 1. Fortunately, with one of the enemies as a cat, there was little to worry about in terms of offense from these guys. And after all the enemies were dead, the Harpers kindly invited Gale to their refuge a short distance away. Hopscotching through little patches of light just like before, Gale and Tara traversed the Shadow Curse until they arrived at Last Light Inn. Here, some crazy old druid attacks Gale on sight with vines. She's lucky she's a well-known fan-favorite character, or God of Ambition Gale might have to turn her to dust. During this interaction, some weird half-blind tiefling girl that Gale has never seen before shows up and vouches for him. Why thank you, kind stranger. Not sure what prompted this, but I'll take it. So, Gale remembered something he forgot back in Act 1. Very important thing. Short loading screen later, Gale is back in the Blighted Village, and he enters the cellar of this ruined apothecary's shop. In the basement, he finds some skeletons, which he allows to wake each other up for the extra challenge. They still go down without much effort. And after the room is clear, he finds a scroll in a coffin that summons a cheeky Quasit. After getting past the magic mirror blocking his way, he talks to the Quasit again, gaining it as a permanent summon ability. But again, we already have Tara, which is more than we need. In this basement is a creepy book with a face in the cover with glowing purple eyes. Gale recognizes it as a magical tome filled with forbidden Thayan magic. He can't open it yet as he doesn't have the key. Guess we have one more step in this town. Into the well in the center of town now, which is covered in spider webs, and spiders, as one might expect. The mama spider awaits in the deepest chamber, which doesn't pose as much of a threat when transformed into a cat. So after the easiest win against the spider matriarch in BG3 history, Gale snaps up the dark amethyst sitting in the corner. And with that, he travels back through the ether to the waypoint at the Last Light Inn. While surrounded by Harpers looking on in horror, he opens the Necromancy of Thay and absorbs all that forbidden knowledge. Hey, that extra +1 to wisdom saves might come in handy at some point. Gale finally speaks to Jaheira, hearing about the situation over here, an undead general leading the army of the Absolute. And of course, he has some secret that makes him impossible to defeat. What a conundrum. To reach his evil lair, we will need protection from the Shadow Curse, so we visit the cleric protecting the inn, Isabel. She gives us protection, courtesy of her goddess Seluna, and then suddenly a winged doofus shows up and attacks us. Poor Marcus had no idea what hit him. First, turned into a cat. Then most of his summoned ghouls were wiped out, between Gale himself blasting them, and Tara yeeting one off the roof with Thunderwave. A few survived in the main room below, but they were distracted by the likes of Jaheira and some Harpers. Isabel pulled her favorite move, walking right into an attack of opportunity. But thanks to a timely portent die of 1, the attack missed. Next turn, Gale wiped out Marcus and the ghoul in the room, then flew down and took down another ghoul and turned the last survivor into a cat. This silly lady reverted the polymorph, which led to her friend getting slapped around. Good job, lady. But in the end, that one attack that Harper took was the only injury in the whole battle. Nice to have an easy breezy time with this normally painful battle. Isabel and Jaheira were just fine, and now Gale finally could start making inroads into the Cursed Lands and towards Moonrise Towers. He needed a source of light for the deepest, darkest parts of the curse, though, and for that, he had some Harpers offer their assistance. Gale joined the group of Harpers as they went to a small house in the shadows. There, they set up an ambush for a cultist caravan traveling to Moonrise Towers. The caravan approaches, led by some horrible Spider-Man. Or is it Man-Spider? Karnus took 2 ruins to defeat, and he got a counterattack in between, though Counterspell put the kibosh on that. Only a few goblins were left after the first volley, so the Harpers should be able to handle them. Well, I guess not. The Harpers said Gale could lay claim to the lantern, so he picked it up and freed the little pixie from inside, getting permanent protection from the curse. Nice. A little ways down the hill, Roland the Magician was being attacked by Magicians Alliance enforcers. Wait, I think I made this joke once before. Gale went into the toll house next and encountered the horrible gold monster, like a cookie monster, but for gold. Look how she nom-noms those coins. Well, I remembered to send away my gold before the battle like a good little metagamer. She was turned into a cat, and then some distance put between her and Gale so that he didn't have to worry about getting turned to gold when he blasted the skulls. Well, I guess Invisible Little Shovel didn't get the memo. Honestly, I forgot you were even there, but now at least you make a fine statue. Also, somehow killing just 2 skulls and giving her a shot in the arm pushed her all the way to naked undead form. But the skulls give XP, so making sure to take them out first. Do they give XP even if you skip them? Not risking it. Gale decided to defy Mystra here, since he's been on the outs with her anyway. He absorbed the creature's essence, creating a shadow magic spell slot. Might be nice once I start actually using real spells with Gale. Before heading to Moonrise Towers, Gale decided to clean up the surrounding area, starting with this structure in the main square. Oh, a secret entrance. Nice, a chance for some free stat increases. Damn dude, 29 intelligence? That is a very smart boy. With these beautiful new mental stats, Gale went to clean up some more thorns. He ran into Arabella up the steps and invited her to his camp. She seems to be looking for her parents. Gale found them dead like 2 feet away. Look a little harder next time. Thanks to his massive bulging brain, Gale convinced Malus to submit himself for surgery. Outwitted yet again. He hit level 7 here because Malus Thorm gives just a dump truck full of XP. At level 7, Gale gets some level 4 spells, so he takes Stone Skin and Ice Storm. Yeah, Stone Skin didn't end up being useful. Up next is Thizabald Thorm, my favorite Thorm, personally. If it weren't such common knowledge at this point how to beat him, he would be such a fun little surprise for newbies. Anyway, Gale drank him under the table, with sleight of hand naturally, and regaled him with the Saga of Gale. He couldn't handle it. Now we are about ready to enter Moonrise Towers. Lan Tarv is the easiest vendor in the game to get to 100 attitude. Just a pretty weak check to convince him how much of a badass you are. So he is officially buying all my junk while in Act 2. Gale runs into a familiar voice berating some goblins. Oh, this is Ketheric Thorm, the big bad boss of Act 2, huh? He doesn't feel quite divine enough. Gale can handle him. Gale frees a couple gnolls from a mind-controlling weirdo, just his daily good deed, nothing to see here. Then he finds this even weirder lady with way too much red eyeshadow. She wants his blood. The blood of a god? What will you do with that? Make a mediocre potion, apparently. Though the human one is probably the best one of them, it still stinks because of the hangover. But this girl has something else Gale might be interested in. A potion that will let him carry a moderate amount more junk at a time. That would be cool. All he needs is to trade a vampire spawn. Now, where would he find one of those? I never met Astarion, did I? Back to Act 1 again. Gale recruits Astarion for totally legitimate reasons. He leaves him in camp like a good little vampire spawn. On the way back, he has a moment in camp where Astarion tries to feed. Damn dude, you move fast. We've only known each other like 12 seconds. He rebuffs Astarion, but forgives him for his blasphemous attempts to feed on Gale's divine blood. If this were the real game, it should be noted that Astarion can't feed on Gale because he gets badly poisoned, and he thinks Araja Bloodra has corrupted blood. Speaking of which, Gale convinces Astarion to bite her so that he can get that tasty potion. Gale chugs it and gets a permanent +2 to strength. Totally worth this much time and effort for a stat that only amounts to more carry weight. Gale returns to camp and blasts Astarion into dust. Oh, he's still in the party. So he survives, I guess, though painfully. After relieving him of all his goods, he asks Withers to collect his new vampire friend and leaves him in camp for the rest of the game. So Gale forgot one more fun thing to do back in Act 1. This one actually will be pretty meaningful, by the way. So he teleports to the toll house where Karlach and the paladins were hanging out and followed the road. After putting down some hyenas and gnolls and skipping right past a burnt down inn, he encountered a group of Githyanki hanging around a bridge. With no fear, he went into battle with them, and showed them what happens to alien monsters who threaten a god. Gale blasts his way into the Temple of Ilmater and talks his way past the guards at the Creche proper. Then he finds the infirmary and a crazy Githyanki doctor? She straps him into a big alien machine that starts sucking his brain out. Thanks to intelligence being one of the stats that can be selected here, and a bunch of inspiration points, it went reasonably well. Saving throws are definitely scarier than ability checks, but intelligence is still safe either way. Now, with a powerful buff that lets him use tadpole powers as a bonus action, and again, that will be super important later in the game, Gale obliterates the Doctor and heads back to the Shadowcurse lands yet again, this time for good. No more return trips, only moving forward from now on. Zarel gives Gale the key to a certain necromancer's laboratory, and after solving a very easy puzzle, Gale finds a very neat thing on the table. A shadow sigil, which he can use to craft a shadow lantern from a pixie corpse. Mystra doesn't approve. Gale doesn't care. Time for just a ton of XP. Gale systematically works his way through Moonrise Towers, cutting down the cultist guards on every floor and in every room. For the most part, he does so without being detected. Occasionally, a guard will catch him, but not for murder, for theft. Priorities. You can turn us all into fine powder one by one, but if you steal our rotten bananas, that's a bridge too far, mister. Anyway, at the end, he couldn't avoid aggroing the whole main entrance chamber full of NPCs. Even the weak level 1 pilgrims got in the mix. Gale had a plausible excuse to spare Lan Tarv the Bugbear, and even little halfling scoundrel Roa Moonglow. They are sources of cash. So after keeping just those two alive and disintegrating the rest of the room, Gale makes his escape. When he returns, the two vendors are back to their old selves, even at 100 attitude still, but Gale is now marked for death by everyone else in the towers. That's fine though, the goal is to wipe everybody out anyway, so let's just keep doing that. Next up, the dungeons. Naturally, he is attacked on sight now, but he clears them out all the same, including the guys on the docks. In the process, he reaches level 8. This time, he takes the new spells Ivard's Black Tentacles and Minor Elemental. No, I will not summon the Elemental. Tara is enough summon for me. And for feat, Gale takes Warcaster. Advantage on concentration seems pretty good for a wizard, even a godly one. Just for fun, Gale decides to free the tieflings and gnomes from their cells by letting Wulbren bust his way through the back wall. Then he went around collecting rewards from all the happy people back in Last Light when their friends and family return safe. Sometimes it pays to help people. So back when Gale defeated Malus Thorm, he picked up a battered lute off his body. Now that lute is useful. He brings it to Halsin, who is watching over a comatose flaming fist in a side room of the inn. The music from the lute wakes the man up, who recognizes Halsin from his dreams. Halsin gets some information he needs to help dispel the curse around here. That would be nice, I guess. This place is pretty dreary with all this shadow curse. Time for the big portal battle. This one can be a pain, especially solo. Even godlike Gale has to prepare properly to make this work because of how overwhelming the odds are. The key to the strategy I always use here, especially when solo, is Ivard's Black Tentacles. Placing it over on this side makes an impassable wall of black goo that stops all the troops trying to approach the portal, and like 90% of the enemies spawn on that side. The only ones to watch out for are the rangers, who spawn in the corner, and the few shadows and ravens on this side. Gale can obliterate the shadows with his power word Ruin, turning a few into cats along the way to minimize their damage potential, and once they are mostly dealt with, he throws some big AoE spells towards the ranged enemies. The ravens are a problem because of how numerous they are, and they still deal good damage with attacks, but they only have 1 HP, so go down to any AoE spell. Accidentally clipped the portal with a fireball though. Good thing that was like the only damage it took the whole fight, plus an attack from a raven or two. By the time the last turn rolled around, all the enemies had been taken out except a few stragglers, and the portal was totally safe-ish. No big deal. Gale is a wizard after all, so he has a kit of powerful tools at his disposal for any situation, not just overpowered god moves. Halsin comes back with a forest child, but tells Gale this is only half of him, and the other half is somewhere out in the curse. His house is in some area with slightly more flowers than one might expect for this zone. When Gale shows up asking him to return to his better half, he gets mad and runs through a portal. I was so tempted to try using Power Word Ruin on the Night Dome. So tempted. But I resisted. That would have certainly been game over. It deals twice as much damage reflected to the user. That's like close to 600 if I hit with all 3 beams. Instead, I did this the right way. Took out all the little kid clones of Oliver as they spawned in, the bigger owlbear shadows as well. Tara actually pulled her weight pretty well here with spells like Thunder Wave that hit multiple of the little weak shadows at once. After an excruciating battle fighting like 100 clones, finally Oliver gives up and rejoins his other half, and that is the last major task here in Act 2. Let's go to the finale, shall we? Gale makes the trip up to the Thorn Mausoleum and even humors Raphael, who just cannot help himself but listen to the sound of his own voice. Then he goes inside the mausoleum and then solves the easy puzzle with the buttons, after failing it once. Now we are in the Gauntlet of Shar. And I basically skipped the whole thing. See, you only need 1 orb to move the top elevator. You could technically jump all the way down without even that one, but I didn't want to futz with that. Instead, I killed the rats in the bottom, which spawns the last Justiciar. Again with the phasing in and out Lurthendor. Is this not a bug? It happens every time. But he calmed down once he was turned into a cat. Then Yurgir, with no reason to hang around, leaves with Raphael and lets me just yoink his orb. Enough to get out of here, like less than 10 minutes work. GG Gauntlet of Shar, into the Shadowfell we go. Need to actually use jump here instead of flight since it's so much faster. A unique quirk of this area compared to everywhere else in the game where flight would be preferred. At the bottom, Balthazar is gloating, as he does. Gale's first time seeing this guy was when he entered the Shadowfell, by the way. Seems awfully chummy. Anyway, as expected, Gale goes straight into battle. As a cat, Balthazar isn't much threat since most of his power comes from spells. He can still use his legendary reaction to put down some necrotic area around a dead ally, but he can't really stand up to Power Word Ruin either. There are certainly a lot of skeletons in here though. Thankfully, they all suck and miss their attacks. Didn't even need shield and most of them missed. Because of efficiency, when all the skeletons stack up on Gale, he decides to use a proper AoE ability instead of just killing 3 at a time like a chump. Repulsor is kind of a freebie since it's a bonus action, and it launches a bunch away. Aelin also dies, but she's immortal, so no big. After several turns, all the skeletons are wiped out, and Aelin is a little sour because of that death earlier, but she gets over it once Gale frees her. And now we can finally go take down the final boss of this place. Only poor Lantarv is left defending the towers. Sorry man, you helped us so much, but now your time has come. Maybe you follow your ambitions in the afterlife. With Aelin and Tara by his side, Gale reaches the roof and takes on Ketheric Thorn, who retreats after 1 Power Word Ruin. That was easy. Then a pretty strange bug happened. The battle wouldn't end. All the Necromites were dead, but they wouldn't leave combat. I think it had something to do with Form Sculpt Tressum, but who knows. I was very frustrated because I had no idea how to solve this. I tried leaving the roof and coming back, going to camp and back, and even tried picking up their bodies and relocating them. Nothing fixed it. Then I tried going over to the tentacle hole, which leads forwards, which caused an autosave. But the battle continued, and Gale wouldn't enter while in combat. Uh-oh, I might have borked my save. But a solution presented itself. Out of sheer desperation, I tried using Form Sculpt Tressum again, on Gale. And somehow, that worked. I have no idea why. The battle was over, and after a long rest, Jaheira appeared in her usual spot. Why did this fix it? Why, Larian? Oh, the owlbear cub showed up just in time during the last long rest of Act 2. Just made the cut, little buddy. Welcome to the team. Gale went around smiting all the brains and such in the colony. They give way too much XP for how easy they are. Then he reached level 9 after the undead room. At level 9, he gets level 5 spells, and decides to take Cone of Cold and Hold Monster, both pretty good stuff. Once everything in the colony is dead, Gale finally approaches the final door. The game keeps dropping hints that we should maybe use the orb to explode right about now. Stop that. A god of ambition needs to be a little more ambitious than that. One Power Ranger scene later, it's time for the final boss of Act 2, the Run Killer himself, Ketheric Thorm, and the avatar of Merkel. Tara showed off her value here. She was responsible for freeing Aelin from the Soul Cage, and did a very good job. Yes, she did. Yes, she did. Then Gale thoroughly vaporized Ketheric in one action, and when the Avatar came out, did one more blast, and had to beat Cheeks to a safer spot to pass turn. The frightened effect from his counterattack was annoying, but not game-ending. From the top of this ledge, he could Misty Step to range and then give another pair of triple taps to Merkel, ending the fight. And that does it. Act 2 completed. Gale just made his way out of the towers, ignoring all these randos who are celebrating. Oh, but Jaheira joins the camp. She will be set dressing, I guess. We are only allowed to have druids and animals in camp, it seems. Astarion's corpse counts. Thanks to them making a very clear "we are the villains" speech within Gale's earshot, he now knows who he has to hunt in the city. The endgame is approaching, off to Baldur's Gate. Act 3 starts off hot and heavy with everyone's favorite ambush. Very fortunate, the most important bits of the God of Ambition buff stick around through long rests. I can live without the Aura of Possibility until I get inside. Tara jumped the gun a little bit. How did you get in there so quickly? I decided to just use a haste potion to make sure I got inside the portal in a single turn, and as expected, Tara was inside waiting. Because of the stupid way initiative works if you join a battle already in progress, and the lethargic effect from the haste potion wearing off, I lost my first turn entirely. No matter, second turn the Gith duo were obliterated. Before going down to fight the Gith quartet alongside the Emperor, I make sure to reapply God of Ambition for the buff. You never know, it could save me on some random thing like an acrobatics check. We all know the drill here. Dream Guardian is really a mind flayer, cool. I guess Gale is pragmatic enough to know to help his protector lest he get taken over by the Absolute. No Bloodlust Elixir here, so just one use of Power Word Ruin per turn. That plus Form Sculpt Tressum takes half the enemy crew out of the fight though. Some brains didn't make it. They will be mourned. Thanks to the Emperor using Stun, the Gith didn't get a turn 2 to work with, which meant they lost the fight. My favorite part was when Tara blasted this one into oblivion. Tara is always good for at least one bad guy per fight. The Emperor regains control of Orpheus, then gives us his whole life story in painful detail, and then gives us a very nice gift. The gift of better tadpole powers. And this is one of the most significant upgrades in the whole run. So now, with advanced tadpole powers, we get a replacement flight ability, which means we can remove the one from CYS. Not a huge deal, but it just means if you want to play this without using the flight cheat, you can get it anyway at the start of Act 3. More importantly, we gain access to a few key things: expertise on all the conversation skills, Mind Blast, and the biggest of big boys, Black Hole. Black Hole is actually my favorite ability in the whole game, bar none. What a ridiculous thing this is. And thanks to our visit to the creche, we can use it as a bonus action. Beautiful. Following our little upgrade, now we have access to Act 3's map, starting with Rivington, and we are going to blow right through this. A quick stop at the circus, just for the 5,000 gold statue. That's one way we can improve saving throws, is that permanent bless effect. Then we head straight to Worm's Crossing, where we meet a checkpoint with a Robocop standing guard. Gale is feeling pretty confident these days, confident enough to charge straight through these guards by force. And here begins the 5-star wanted run of Worm's Crossing. Strap in, this one will take a while. First, Gale battles all the guards in Steelwatcher right here. The Steelwatcher is a non-factor thanks to the gnomes stunning it. But this is our first fight against one, and we verify we can take one down from full health in a single turn. If their health doesn't go all the way to 0, it goes low enough to trigger their self-destruct. This will be very important later. Most guards don't have enough HP to withstand a single Ruin Bolt, but sometimes they take 2. Steelwatchers are immune to polymorph, by the way. Guards and Steelwatchers give tons and tons of XP, which is great because Gale is currently underleveled for Act 3. They also drop a lot of loot worth some decent money, so we need a vendor, and we choose none other than Danthalon of Danthalon's Dancing Axe. We are also on the lookout for Bloodlust Elixirs from basically every vendor in Act 3. So far, we haven't found any. The next group of guards Gale goes up against are the ones guarding the drawbridge to Worm's Rock Fortress. This one has 3 whole Steelwatchers to deal with. They do a surprisingly bad job at taking down Gale. Tara isn't much use in this fight, so I just have her retreat to a safe location. Thanks to Mind Sanctuary, Gale manages to wipe out 2 of them next turn. There was a scary moment where Ranger uses his grappling hook to relocate Gale right in between 2 exploding Steel Watchers, but fortunately he flew right past to a safe spot. Crisis averted. While looting the bodies, some civilians spot Gale and rightly assume he's up to no good. Again, people in this game really hate theft. So that draws in more Flaming Fist, what I can only assume are infinitely spawning guards meant to punish you for crimes. They still give XP, so maybe one could grind infinite XP here? Anyway, this cycle continues for a very long time. Gale wipes out a few guards, then loots their bodies, then some civvy notices, more show up, rinse and repeat. At one point, once Danthalon and his bodyguard themselves aggro from all this nonsense, Gale decides to give up on his criminal enterprise. He also reaches level 10 here, which gives some really awful abilities thanks to Divination Wizard subclass. He takes the new spells Telekinesis and Enhance Leap. Well, shall we finally go see the new Archduke? Gale decides to just let things fly, a suicide mission in most runs, but like I said, Gale is confident. So the 5-star wanted run continues. This time, he aggroes the entirety of Worm's Rock Fortress simultaneously. This battle took nearly an hour and a half of constant combat to finish. It's a doozy. First, he has to take down all the Flaming Fists and Steel Watchers in the main corridor. Some reinforcements come out from the side halls to join in, especially when this one sounds Lump's Warhorn, or I guess the Flaming Fist equivalent. At least 30 minutes and at least 30 enemies later, Gale is finally done with the first stage of this battle and can start preparing for the next. It would be an especially bad idea to go in through the front door, so Gale approaches from the roof. He decides to clear out Gortash's office first. There are some Steel Watchers and Bay Knight guards up there, of course, like there are when Gortash is there later for his boss battle, but without Gortash himself, it isn't too bad. One really neat thing I discovered for the first time, and legitimately had no idea existed, is this crazy upper level in the sub-building containing Gortash's office. And if you check the outside on this ledge, there are dead Ballast assassins and a note giving orders to infiltrate Gortash's inner circle. That's crazy. Like, obviously Orin has been conspiring against Gortash, we already knew this, but this is proof she actually had spies tracking him. Let me know if anybody actually knew this was here, because I've never seen anybody mention it, nor have I seen it in my many runs of this game. Alright, with the roof clear, that gives a good escape route if things go south in the really big part of this battle, so now it's time to go aggro them. In the inauguration ceremony, there are at least 9 Steel Watchers and a whole bunch of guards, both Flaming Fist and otherwise. It's a really big group, possibly the most overwhelming force in the entire game. So even godlike Gale needs to play this one carefully. He snipes a Steel Watcher from the side door to start combat, then retreats towards safety. Not many of them make it outside to where he is, just a single guard and Steel Watcher really. The Steel Watchers are priority targets, so Gale focuses on them first. He can fly up to the upper levels to get away from attacks. Nobody can get to him thanks to the verticality of this wooden platform. Poor Raven Guard made a big mistake coming this close. Sorry, Will. Oh, by the way, Will is the only Origin character to survive this run, other than Gale, of course, and I guess Astarion still has the possibility of coming back thanks to being recruited. Will we just never got to before he disappeared from the game thanks to Karlach dying. Back to the battle, I really don't know what to say about this. Gale just keeps flying up this ledge, waiting for the forever it takes for every enemy to take their turn, then flying down and sniping anything that is close enough, and this goes on for quite some time. Gortash himself doesn't really get into the mix for a long time. He stays in the main chamber throwing buffs at everybody else, buffs that do nothing to protect them. Tara isn't really involved. She's hiding on a rooftop, safe from the violence, for now. By the time Gortash comes out to play, probably half the forces are gone, and Gortash's protective barrier has worn off, giving Gale a chance to blast him once. This triggers his Honor Mode exclusive second form, which actually makes him quite tough. Notably, he is immune to force damage. That's a big problem. But he also has a very potent counterattack that he can even use as a cat. It gives a curse to Gale that will do a bunch of force damage if left unchecked, and I mean a lot, like potentially deadly if you get hit with a couple. I start thinking of a plan. How can I take down Gortash when attacking him is potentially lethal, and he is immune to my best attack? And this plan involves Tara, so get over here girl, you're tagging in. Here is the plan. Gale will, obviously, turn Gortash into a cat. That's 100% a necessity. It prevents him from using nasty attacks, but also makes him tossable. Then, since the walls here prevent throwing him off from this low of an angle, Gale tosses him way up onto the roof instead. From up here, an angle can be discovered that results in a very long, lethal drop for our handsome young friend, and Tara is the one who gets the killing blow, with Thunderwave of course, her bread and butter skill. A level 1 spell even. How do you like that? One of the main villains dying to a level 1 spell from a summoned companion. What a world. Well, there are still 7 Steel Watchers? My god. But now it's just a matter of time, blowing them up one by one. In the end, Gale cheeses their AI out with this long ladder leading up from the mountain path onto the castle. And that's that. In one extremely long, drawn-out encounter, Gale managed to defeat Gortash and an entire army before even setting foot in Baldur's Gate. This is probably my proudest moment of the run. Totally worth it. He claims the Netherstone and now, finally, takes those first steps into the city. Oh, he also got level 11? Yes, there was enough XP for an entire level from all the battles that happened here. He just takes Globe of Invulnerability and Arcane Gate. One more minor thing, I visited the gnomes, just because, and had a weird problem. Wulbren wasn't there. Everybody kept saying, go talk to Wulbren, can't help you until Wulbren says so, need to stop Wulbren's evil plot. But he wasn't there. I did end up finding him later, in front of the Steel Watch Foundry, by himself, for whatever reason. But I was truly baffled at this. Alright, we don't have many things to do in the lower city. Orin is obviously a priority. First, I try the wine festival at Cora Highberry's house, but Dolor the Assassin wasn't there. See, I hadn't triggered the event because I skipped the murder mystery in Rivington. I did find out about the family situation at the Highberries though. They're like really nice people. They adopted 2 war orphans with no questions asked and are like amazing, kind parents apparently. Makes me even more upset that I failed to save Cora in my Karlach run. Gale visits Dareth Bonecloak, whose life he altered back in Act 1. He introduces her to a little cat wandering the streets and now she's got her happy ending. She will be one of my primary vendors to sell to going forward. Next, he visits Roland at Sorceress Sundries. Roland is having a hard time of it. Apparently his wizard teacher is kind of a prick. And he's also hunting Aelin? Wow, that's 2 of his friends being hurt by the existence of some stuck-up wizard. Giving a bad name to wizards, are we? Better put him in his place. Wow, this guy sucks. Will be very pleasant to turn him into space dust, but it'll be more fun with Aelin's help, so let's take a little nappy nap, then invite her for the slaughter. I also had a fun bug with Tara. She visited camp to deliver a ring and gave her dialogue from her encounter in Rivington. But then I could summon her and she had some more plot-related dialogue meant to steer Gale towards his personal story. Weird. So, Lorroakan. If you were expecting a big epic battle here, I got bad news for you. Instead of just turning him into a cat like everything else even remotely threatening, I spent the first turn incinerating all his friends. 2 of his Myrmidons, the Construct, and Little Miklar, the poor sap. Lorroakan and the Earth Myrmidon were both slowed as well. Aelin went bananas on the Earth Myrmidon. She nearly took it out by herself. Meanwhile, Lorroakan actually did a pretty smart play. We were all standing in a straight line, so he ran into position and readied Lightning Bolt. Too bad Tara was ready with the counterplay. Good kitty. So yeah, that was the end for him. Next turn, Gale sucked everything into range and then blasted them to bits. Aelin didn't get her cool Mortal Kombat cutscene this time, presumably because you can't do a backbreaker move to a guy that is a pile of dust on the floor. But she still gets weirdly upset over his death. Never understood that. Great, well, Lorroakan is always good for a laugh, but the real reason Gale came here is down in the vaults. Stopping to pick up Marco Heshkir and the Robe of the Weave along the way, just because. In the vaults, we are looking for some books. Obviously, one particular book is needed for the story, but the others are good too. See, wizards can actually scribe the unique scrolls down here. Artistry of War, Dethrone, and Summon Diva. These are all one-time scrolls found only down here, but wizards can learn them permanently and prepare them like normal spells. Gale also found the Tharkiat Codex, which gives 2 things, 20 temporary HP that refreshes on long rest, once the curse is cleansed of course, and a conclusion to the Necromancy of Thay storyline, which gives a pretty terrible summon ability. And then, the book that my man was really after, The Annals of Karsus. This one is necessary to finish Gale's personal story. By reading it, he gains the knowledge needed to reforge the crown of Karsus in the epilogue, which is how he becomes the god of ambition. After reading this book, good old Elminster makes a return to camp to speak to Gale. He comes bearing not really good news, just news. Mystra wants to see Gale and talk to him face to face, presumably as a last-ditch effort to steer his path away from the crown of Karsus. So now Gale needs to visit the local church and pray at the shrine of Mystra so he can have one last conversation with his goddess. Tara seems on board with the two speaking one last time at least. Mystra naturally asks why Gale didn't do as she asked and, explode? And naturally Gale doesn't appreciate being asked to do that to begin with. After explaining the whole situation with the Karsite weave and the crown and the absolute etc, she asks Gale to surrender the crown to her, and he refuses, claiming he will take control of it and the Karsite weave with it. Mystra leaves with a pretty blatant threat, but Gale has come too far to back down now. So his path to godhood now assured, the final step on the way to the ending is to find and defeat Orin and get her Netherstone. Not wanting to go all the way back and start at the beginning with the murder in the temple, I figured it would be just as well to start here in town. The most obvious site would be the scene of the murder of Duke Stelmane in the Elfsong Tavern, and that was right on the money. There, Devella Fountainhead was investigating the murder, and with some clever investigative skills of his own, Gale convinces her to let him help. Since I doubt many people have followed this particular route to reach Orin, I'll explain how it went. After a perception check to see her hiding her ballast theory, Devella asked us to follow up with a specific murder scene nearby. It's the home of Frank Peartree, the one that is boarded up from the outside with a flaming fist sign to mark the location. I missed it at first, but there's a hidden blood-stained parchment in here near the bed that progresses the quest. Look familiar? Yeah, it's the same document you find in Dolor's hidden room in Frago's flophouse back in Worm's Crossing, in the normal path through this quest. So now all of the potential murder victims are marked on the map, including ones that are already dead, like Alexander Rainforest. But we already know where Dolor is supposed to be, as we tried to corner him there once earlier, Cora Highberry's house. So now the wine festival is finally up and running, and lo and behold, there he is, our assassin. Unlike my stupid mistake with Karlach, this time I reveal the poison in the drink to Cora straight away. This naturally pisses off little Dolor, who begins battle by trying to teleport away and summoning a bunch of doppelganger buddies. Tara uses Counterspell to stop Dimension Door, but then Dolor goes invisible, making it impossible for Gale to blow him up. Divine Revelry doesn't work on the doppelgangers, though I find out later that it did work on Dolor. He's been sitting there dancing invisible this whole time. But as mentioned at the very beginning of the video, Divine Revelry doesn't even stop a single turn, so he just leaves with Dimension Door once his turn rolls around. Dumb. Why does this spell suck so much compared to the rest of the godly powers? Well, beating the doppelgangers was simple enough, and Cora is very happy to be alive, of course. Now that I know her family situation, glad we helped her. Off to the next murder victim, which again is the same as always, Figaro the Fashionista. Dolor round 2 was a much more dangerous situation. He goes first because his initiative is sky high, and the first thing the little bastard does is throw a paralyzing poison at Gale, which sticks. Poor Devella is sitting there paralyzed on the ground. Gale can't do a thing to help her, so the doppelgangers manage to kill her. I usually pride myself on keeping her alive, but it couldn't be helped this time. With Gale out of commission, Tara needs to do something. She has a very respectable kit of spells now, and one I thought might be helpful was Glyph of Warding. I tried to put Dolor to sleep, but it failed. Sorry, Gale. Hope you can survive while being attacked by all these enemies while paralyzed. Dolor decided to paralyze Tara next, then tried to sneak attack her. Thankfully, she has tons of arcane ward to protect her from being an abjuration wizard. Gale's paralyzed wore off now, and boy was there a reckoning. Dolor was immediately singled out and disintegrated, then the couple doppelgangers in the room. The following turn, Gale flew around blowing up the remainder, which finally cleared the place out. Figaro also goes straight to 100 approval after this, so he's a new potential junk buyer, should I need one for the little time left in the game. I tried using Speak with Dead on Devella, and she gives the information needed to progress the quest, though it doesn't update the journal. But you can still pick up the document from Dolor's body, so off to the Unholy Tribunal. Was holding on to Gortash's hand, for perfectly legitimate reasons, which meant we could enter the tribunal and advance it with no issues. In the end, Gale tells Saravok he wants to become an unholy assassin, which makes his little ghost friends teleport ahead into the next room. But Saravok gets up and walks, slowly. Big mistake. Gale takes that opportunity to turn the brute into a cat. That alone didn't make him aggressive, but blasting him with a few ruin bolts sure did. Big boy has a ton of HP, so he survived one full blast, but since it was a sneak attack, it didn't eat up Gale's action. He turned him into a cat yet again, then blasted him for a second time, finishing the job. The ghosties were hanging around in the next room, and though they had some nasty spells like Cloud Kill, it was nothing Gale and Tara couldn't handle. After claiming the Amulet of Ball from Saravok's body, and a map marking the location of the temple in the Undercity, Gale set out into the sewers. He could walk right by the grease blobs and such, but a little surprise showed up right near the entrance to the Undercity. Halsin. And this is actually the first time Gale has encountered Orin and her shapeshifting in this run. He waltzed right past all her little traps in Rivington. I was hoping for a little more of a reaction that I killed Gortash before even speaking with her, but she just congratulated us and invited us to do battle. Don't mind if I do, crazy lady. The chasm with the power word kill trial was pretty easy with at-will flight and ruin blasts. Just focus down the main target, ignoring all the ads. Though if this axe lady hit us just a little bit farther, that could have been the end of the run. So I'm going to come clean now. I cheated during this fight, and only this fight, because I actually nearly died and lost the run. It was scary. Basically, the problem was the fearful condition. Orin puts it on with this specific attack right here, Piercing Growl, and Gale failed his save multiple times. Fearful means I have no control over Gale. He just runs around eating attacks of opportunity like they're free chicken. And it isn't like Orin's attacks tickle, so yeah, this was the closest I came to losing the run since a similar problem occurred with the Harpies at level 3. Failed saving throws. The downfall of any god run. But I wasn't going to ruin a perfectly good video over something like this, and there actually is a solution. It's a good learning opportunity, so let's see how one gets around this little issue. The answer, as with anything in life, is with Volo. Assuming you save his life when he is strapped to this pile of explosives in the lower city near the Steel Watch Foundry, he rewards you with a book. A book that details the powers and abilities of the Slayer form that Orin assumes during this battle. The actual tangible effect of which is to give you advantage on saving throws against being frightened by her attacks. Now, frightened and fearful are two different conditions, but this is actually an error in the tooltip. The correct condition should be fearful that you get advantage on. So armed with just that little bit of a boost, I go back in and try again. This battle is all about taking out her little minions. That means lots of AoE spells because the important ones all have Sanctuary. Unfortunate for Halsin. That's one less ally in camp, I guess. Black Hole can stack all these guys up, and then spells like Ice Storm go a long way in deleting all these minions. Tara also plays a very important role here. Like so many times before, she uses Thunder Wave to yeet dudes off the ledge, so she can help take out the guy standing too far away to get sucked in by the black hole. After about 3 turns, all the minions have been wiped out by either Gale or Tara, and it was just Orin left. But she's still a threat even alone, even with slow. She's immune to polymorph, by the way. I learned this lesson in other runs, but never stand with your back to the edge when attacking Orin. She knocks back with her counterattack. Unstoppable is a very annoying status effect since it prevents most damage and Orin has 12 stacks of it. With only 3 hits per turn, it takes a while to remove them. But once the last minion is gone, she doesn't get them refreshed anymore. And I don't know if this was a bug or not, but 1 of 3 bolts of Power Word Ruins started doing full damage to her as well. So yeah, that did it. This was easily the hardest fight in the whole run, and the only one I had to cheat on. Can never be too careful with Orin, kids. Well, with the last Netherstone in hand, now we can head to the final boss and end this once and for all. Gale walks past all the rats leading up to the Morphic Pool and gets in the boat to the finale. Still level 11. Was tempted to fly past the brains that ambush you in this weird little area here, but they give a ton of XP, so I figured if I wanted to get level 12, I should take them out. In the cutscene with the brain, Gale succeeded the first 2 checks easily, the third barely whiffed, and the 99 had 5 tries but didn't get that magic 20. Shame. The Emperor shows up to save us as he always does, and in this run, Gale has no reason to worry about Orpheus, so he just relinquishes the stones to the Emperor. Now a party of 3, Gale, Tara, and the Emperor head off to the High Hall for the final approach. I was hoping against hope that Cole the Red, the kobold merchant in the final area, would have bloodlust elixirs, but nope. I even tried using CYS to spawn a bag of potions, and there was something that really strongly looked like a bloodlust elixir, but it wasn't. So, going into the final battle with a disadvantage, simply because I couldn't find anybody selling the elixir I needed. The crew took down a group of enemies near the entrance just to clear that last little bit of XP to get Gale to level 12. At level 12, he got the new spells Darkness and Scorching Ray. Yeah, not exactly endgame tier bangers. And the last feat, Lucky, because hey, it could change something in the last fight, make some check work that wouldn't, you never know. Better than any other options, really. As for the rest of the enemies out here in the courtyard, Gale cast Invisible on himself and just flew past. The Emperor had to find his own way. Gale was given another chance to explode before climbing up to the brain, but obviously not. This is the final battle and he's going all the way. I was extremely disappointed to find out that Tara didn't make the climb up, and her summon ability only works outside of combat, so it is with the greatest regret that Tara will not be featuring in the final battle. Such a bummer. The dragon was turned into a cat, which kept it completely under control for the duration of the battle. Then both Gale and the Emperor started flying up the right side to approach the crown, taking out mind flares along the way. They can cast Counterspell, so it's generally a good idea to try to polymorph them first as bait. But Gale managed to eliminate all 4 of them without too much issue. They kept failing their Counterspell, presumably because the spells are level 9. When all the mind flares were dealt with, Gale dropped a globe of invulnerability at the foot of the crown, and the Emperor started his cast of Karsus's Compulsion. He did it just in time and made it inside the portal. Back outside, a few loose cats were running around, and then the Nautiloid showed up to bombard the area. A new Mind Flare showed up, which broke the initiative order, meaning Gale and the Emperor couldn't share their turn anymore. So Gale just had to risk it with a cast of Power Word Ruin and hope to not get stunned out of the rest of his turn by the counter. This is where Lucky came in handy. It allowed him to save right here. Then a Mind Sanctuary allowed him a second set of blasts, and that dropped the brain to a measly 38 remaining HP. The Emperor got his chance to act, and he flew in and used Potent Concentrated Blast, which finished the brain off. Final boss? Defeated. Gale had the Emperor give the order to the brain to destroy all the tadpoles in the city and itself, then they crashed into the river. When Gale climbed out, the ending started, and we see all his friends, Jaheira, of course, and, Astarion. Why are you here? And naked? And this is the moment the whole run was leading up to. Gale recovers the crown of Karsus from the river and restores it, rebuffing Mystra. She's upset, but she's just jealous. Now she has to see her ex at all the Pantheon meet and greet brunches. That must be awkward. And because for some reason this just keeps happening to me, I checked Gale's character sheet in the epilogue and he's a Dark Justiciar. I really gotta get to the bottom of why that keeps happening. And so ends the God of Ambition run of Baldur's Gate 3. If it wasn't obvious from the absurd concept, this was a joke run. Obviously, I didn't think it would be that difficult to speed through the game using a level 9 spell at will, but honestly, I was surprised by several things. First, how much strategy was actually required at times. Many fights had too many enemies to just win immediately, so choosing targets and cleverly turning them into cats was important for victory. Second, how much of a disadvantage having absolutely no equipment actually puts you in. The biggest thing was saving throws. The only times I ever came close to losing was because of failed saving throws, obviously Orin being the worst culprit. The fact that she can't be polymorphed or killed quickly means you have to tank her attacks, and they can give nasty status effects. I'd honestly consider her among the hardest fights in the game for that reason. I didn't try the likes of Raphael or Ansur, but I can't imagine they would have been as tough as that. All in all, I'm glad I did this run, as silly as it was. The total runtime on my save file at the end was just under 25 hours. It was by far the fastest I've ever beaten the game, but I blasted through, skipping most things that weren't required, especially in Act 3. Would I recommend others try this? Maybe, if you like the power fantasy. Would I say it's a particularly challenging way to play the game? Absolutely not, but you might hit a few bumps here and there. But hey, if it was entertaining to watch, that's all that matters. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.